You're now taking over the airwaves. This is Ultimate U Radio.
Guys, welcome to URI Radio, and today we've got a very special guest all the way from the US, the amazing Alex Jamieson, our celebrity chef. You've done so many things. I love going through your bio. It's very, very impressive. Of course, a celebrity chef, speaker, author, and co-star of Supersize Me. Welcome to URI Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? I mean, you've done a lot, of course. It's incredible what you've done, and I love. We'll get into that shortly. But let's start from the beginning. Why are you so passionate about what you do, and how did it all start for you?
Well, it actually started when I was a kid. My mom had an organic gardening radio show for 10 years when I was growing up, and so I grew up in the garden. And I didn't know that everybody didn't live like that. I think they had children to do most of the chores and the weeding, but I knew where my food came from. And, my mom was like Google for organic gardeners in the Pacific Northwest. We lived around Portland, Oregon. So people would call into her show and, get help so they didn't have to spray pesticides on their plants. But even though I had this super hippie, healthy upbringing, I was also a total sugar junkie. And I would do everything in my power to get it. So there's a family story where once a year, my grandparents would send this big tin of Christmas cookies, and it would go on top of the refrigerator. And we were allowed to have one cookie a day. But I was discovered on top of the refrigerator at the age of like 4 or 5. I crawled all the way up there and was going through them. I actually started going to Sunday school at the church down the road when I was about 7 or 8 by myself, because I found out that the kids at Sunday school got Kool-Aid and cookies and hot dogs. So I was dedicated to my sugar. Yeah. And then, of course, when I turned 14, 15, I got my own job, started making all my own food choices pretty much. So from the age of 15 to 25, I ate nothing but junk. And around the age of 25, I started to get really sick. I had my first, 13-hour-a-day desk job in corporate America, working for a big fancy law firm. And I started having migraine headaches almost every day. Was putting on lots of weight after college, exhausted, depressed, achy all the time. And I finally went to a doctor after a few months just because of the headaches. I don't know if you've ever had a migraine, but they're terrible. And to have them all the time was just killing me. So I went to a doctor and he said, 5 minutes. He sat with me for 5 minutes and said, here's 2 prescriptions for painkillers and Prozac. And I come from a family background of prescription drug abuse, and I did not want to go down that path. So I started looking for other answers. And I went to, acupuncture, and I tried some other things, and they kind of helped a little bit. But then I found this holistic doctor. We would call him a functional nutrition doctor now. But he asked me what I was eating. And when I told him, he said, no wonder you're sick. So he gave me a list of foods to eat and a list of foods to avoid. And I almost cried because everything that I ate was on the avoid list. But as with most people who make a big change in their life, I had hit my own bottom and I was ready to do anything. I read all the books he gave me. I discovered veganism and I said, that sounds like something I should try. It wasn't a super popular thing to do back in 99. There weren't a lot of vegan restaurants out there. It was kind of hard to come by the information, but within a couple of weeks, I totally changed my diet and the headaches went away and I felt good and the extra weight just started falling off. I wasn't counting calories. I was just eating real food. And within a few months, I was like, man, I'm healed. And I see so many people around me who are sick. I could help them. So I went back to school. I quit my job and I went to this Natural Gourmet Institute here in New York City to learn how to cook in this way, the traditional and holistic ways of eating to help other people.
Amazing. And was that an appropriate time to tap back into mum's knowledge and and sort of go back to your roots as well. I'm sure that's a great resource for you, no doubt.
Mom was right.
Yes.
After all.
Always, right? Always
I know.
right.
It's true. Now that I'm a mom, I'm like, of course, moms are always right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And just as I was going back to culinary school and totally immersed in this world of food and healing, I, of course, had to have a part-time job at night to pay rent and pay for school. So I was working in a super smoky bar, serving pints of Guinness all night long while going to healthy cooking school. And that's where I met Morgan. And we started dating, and we came up with the idea for Supersize Me, maybe 2 years after we started seeing each other.
Yeah.
And as you know, Supersize Me just took off. It was a huge idea.
Absolutely. Tell me more about that. I mean, it was a game changer for so many people, such a huge impact. Did you expect for it to be so big when you started creating it, or what was the ride like for you?
So Morgan was a budding filmmaker. He had a little show on MTV, which was kind of a game show. And I was in this world of food and health, and I was talking about quinoa and kale all the time. And he had a little tiny bit of money that he got from this TV show. Not a lot, a little bit. And he said, well, I can either use this money to pay off some of my debt, or I can do something with it. Yeah. So he was looking for an idea. And we got into this argument one day. It was actually on Thanksgiving in 2002. And there was a news story that came on talking about 2 teenage girls here in New York City who were suing McDonald's for their obesity and diabetes. Wow. Yeah. And Morgan said, come on, you can't sue. You walked in there and bought their food. You can't sue a food company. I said, well, look at how they market to kids that it's okay to eat there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's perfectly an appropriate lifestyle and food choice to eat there all the time. They sell toys to children. So you gotta look at how marketing works in the human brain. And he said, well, what would happen if I just ate there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And a light bulb went off over his head. And I said, no, don't do it. But a month later, we were shooting, and, this was a 30-day experiment. So it was a very, it was about a month and a half of shooting because he had some other interviews to do. And a year later, we were at Sundance, and the film got nominated for an Oscar. So it was this incredible ride. We had no idea if anyone was ever going to see it. We had no idea what was going to happen. If we had, I probably wouldn't have talked about our sex life on camera. There I was in the theater next to my grandmother and my dad, and there I am on screen talking about my sex life.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned doing that film and that whole experiment? I mean, I'm sure there were so many, I bet, but what were some of the big lessons that you learned and took away from that?
One was that edutainment is really important. Being entertaining as you're delivering a message, trying to make it interesting. I think a lot of Now in the last, since Supersize Me, a lot of health information, a lot of, there's great science shows, there's great people teaching cooking, and it is entertaining. So it's helpful, especially for kids, to have a tough subject delivered in a light-hearted way. So that's helpful. And, it was really such a great experience in so many ways. I got to write my first book, The Great American Detox Diet. We got to travel around the world. We came to Australia, we went to New Zealand, we went to over 24 countries in a year when the movie premiered. So it led to a lot of great things. Yeah,
terrific. And again, it did have such a huge impact and really sort of it paved the way for a lot of other awesome documentaries and people to sort of get out there and get the message of health to the world. So, amazing job. You should really give yourself a round of applause. I'm sure everyone virtually is giving you one right now. But it was absolutely terrific. So I want to delve deep back, rewinding again back to your past. And you said you went to your doctor and you were eating terrible foods perhaps, and you said to him, I'm sick, I've got migraines. For our viewers listening, I think it'd be great to get a bit of a contrast so they can see what was that world like what were you eating then, and what was sort of the shifts that you made so people can sort of resonate with perhaps who you were back then.
Sure. So, I grew up, my dad was a swim coach and a soccer coach, so we were always really active. So I didn't think I had to worry about what I ate, but I wasn't I didn't know much about the quality of the food, or I didn't have that in mind. So I ate a lot of fast food. I had usually a vanilla latte and a croissant for breakfast and some kind of takeout Subway sandwich or McDonald's or something, and then pizza or pasta or Chinese for dinner. I was not paying attention at all. It was just a lot of takeout. It was a lot of fast food, not a lot of fresh food at all. And when I realized it was time to change my diet, I did go completely vegan, and I took out a lot of other things at the time. I took out gluten for a while. I took out sugar. That was the most important thing. Looking back now, I realize I probably didn't need to go completely vegan. I was vegan for over 10 years, and we should definitely talk about that. Yeah. But it was sugar that was causing me so many problems. I mean, I was drinking, I don't know if you know what a super big gulp is, but it's close to 2 liters. Wow. It's close to 2 liters of soda almost every day. No one should be drinking that much of anything.
Absolutely.
So changing my diet was totally transformational. And being vegan was very helpful at first, but over the long run, it actually ended up causing me some other problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So it must have been a big shift going from, obviously getting off all the sugar and the rubbish that you were eating, then to vegan. But then, of course, as the story plays out, you're now an ex-vegan, and you went from vegan back to eating, of course, clean foods, whole foods, but adding meat back in. Tell us about that transition, why and how that sort of went down.
So I was vegan for over a decade and had my son. Morgan and I got married. We had a little boy. And then, fast forward, I'm about 34 years old, 35. I don't know if you knew this, but your body changes as you get older. And I started to feel run down. And then Morgan and I were getting separated and divorced. And it was a very stressful time. My hormones started shifting. And I started having my menstrual cycle was coming every 2 weeks. I was totally depleted, totally exhausted. Turns out I was chronically anemic. My hormones were all over the place. And I started craving meat. This was not good. I had written 3 cookbooks on vegan cooking and had appeared as the vegan girlfriend in Supersize Me. And while I never required people to go vegan, I was always encouraging people to try it and see how it worked for them. So it took me a couple of years to figure out what was going on with my body. My thyroid was messed up. The chronic anemia has caused a whole lot of other issues. It kind of came at the same time that my mom got sick and then passed away very quickly, and a lot of insomnia. So a lot of things can happen in your life. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners have experienced this too, where like one thing happens and then another thing happens, and then this layering effect where shit just goes crazy and your whole life feels like it's falling apart. Well, those have a very real effect on your body. Stress is incredibly damaging. Insomnia is a killer. Even one bad night of sleep can start to put you into insulin resistance. And I've worked with lots of women in the past couple of years who they say, they come to me, they're like, I have blood sugar issues. I just can't lose weight. I have, my metabolic syndrome. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, well, how are you sleeping? They're like, oh, I haven't slept well in years. We're going to focus on that. We're not going to focus on anything else right now. Just that one thing can lead to huge shifts for people. So I had to get real again about what my body really needed. And it can be really hard to change how you eat when other people care about how you eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know probably a lot of people who follow you have had situations in their family where they're trying to eat better and their family kind of sabotages them or says negative comments or teases them. Well, imagine coming out online as no longer vegan and having thousands of people, most of whom don't even know you. It can be really hard to find out what you need and really discover who you really are when you're so afraid that people are going to vilify you and crucify you. So a lot of people get stuck because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can imagine how intense and scary that would have been. And also, how brave you must have been to step into that space, because you had a following, like you said, and again, it can be a lot of pressure for you. What did you learn about yourself during that process? Like, it would have, for me, I'm thinking, mental toughness just comes to mind. You would have had to be mentally and emotionally strong during this period. What did you learn about yourself during that phase?
Well, in the last couple of years, actually, I've gone back to school to become certified in applied positive psychology. And I learned a lot about myself in retrospect. That one of the things that I had going for me was I have a really strong community. And even though I actually lost quite a few friends, like I lost some friends who were vegan who didn't want to be friends with me anymore. But I always, I had a diverse group of people, and I have friends since I'm 5-6 years old, people who are like, we don't care what you eat. We just want you to be healthy and discover what's best for you. So I always encourage people who are on that cusp of change in any way, a big change in your life. It can be career, it can be health, whatever. Like, you got to have your people to support you. That's so, so important. And I think just having changed my diet before and seeing such a huge shift, going from the crappy way I was eating to going vegan and feeling such a boost. I'm like, wow, I really got to know my body over that time. And I knew that I could trust my body again. And I think that's what's missing for so many people, is that we don't trust our bodies to heal. We don't know what our bodies are really asking for. And we don't have the experience of like trying something totally different and being able to tune in and listen and rely on that inner wisdom. And it can be hard to do, even when you've done it once or twice. But if you can make friends with your body and really trust her or him, your body should be your best ally, not your worst enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. What happened to your health once you started adding meats and proteins back in? Like, what was the next evolution of health, energy, everything for you? Can you tell us more about that?
Oh my gosh. When I first, I think I had salmon or scallops or something. I started with fish. I was like hiding it under my kale in my basket, like so nobody at the grocery store would see me. That's not good when you're afraid that people are going to be spying on your grocery basket. I physically felt so much better, but emotionally I was still kind of tied up in knots. So even though I was physically feeling well, I was still like emotionally dealing with stuff for quite a while. And it took me a while, even though some of my core friends knew that I was eating meat now, I hadn't really told everybody. So it took me a while to get comfortable with myself. It's hard when it's like, okay, I would defined myself as this way of being and eating, but it was also a big part of my business. And that's a scary transition to go through. I've heard from a lot of people in the past few years who are also vegan, and they're also experiencing health problems after years. And this is not to bash vegans. This is to just to highlight the danger of being religious about a certain way of eating, because it doesn't allow you to evolve with what your body needs. But there are lots of people out there who are experiencing the same thing, and either they don't have any non-vegan friends or even non-paleo friends. I have a girlfriend who's a paleo expert, and she's had to go plant-based, and she's afraid to tell people. So it goes both ways. So I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent. I forget what we were talking about.
So what other health benefits sort of evolved from you starting to eat meat? How did you start to feel after that?
Yeah.
What were some of the plus bonuses? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there were a lot of things going on, so I had to really address the insomnia cycle that I was in, and that really has been meditation has been really helpful for that, and acupuncture has been really super helpful for that. But just getting my hormones back on track, that has required not just eating meat, but taking a lot of iron supplements and finding the right ones that work for my body. That's interesting. So just getting back up to a baseline, it has been a journey. But once all that, once the minerals and the vitamins and everything that I was missing came back, and I thought I was eating so well. I thought, oh, but I'm eating the perfect diet, but I wasn't absorbing any of it. It wasn't working for me. Once that came back on track, I was like, oh my gosh, I have energy again. I can think for more than 30 minutes at a stretch. I can ride bikes with my kid again. My cycle went back to every, 27 days. That's like a miracle. So just feeling like strong again, feeling like I'm in my body again. That was a huge change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what are some of your tips for people that perhaps are starting the diet? I mean, I talk about this a lot, so I love that you brought it up, where, people don't support us always as much as we'd love them to, especially sometimes our friends and family. When we evolve as humans, people often get scared that we're shifting away or too good or they're not good enough, and all these, things come up. And what are some of your tips to help people transition and evolve as humans in regards to health or anything, really?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to acknowledge and talk with the people in your life that change is hard. Change is scary. And ask them, like, what are your concerns? What are your boundaries, and what are your desires? Those three things, that forms the basis of any great challenging conversation. To share I really want to do this because I feel this way and I don't. I want to have the energy so that we can do this together. I really want to get my energy and my focus back on track so that we can create this together. And I'm worried that you aren't going to support me. I had a friend whose brothers were, no, this was a client. I had a client whose brothers were teasing her about how she was eating. And she's an adult, she's a mom, and her adult brothers are teasing her because she's had eczema for so long and she's been trying things for so long. And she finally said, they're teasing me so much. I just go along with it and go, ha ha, at the dinner table when we have family gatherings. And I told her, you have to be honest with them about how this makes you feel. Pull them aside one at a time and just say, I've been in collusion with you, that I've been agreeing to be teased, but I just want you to know, like, how hard this is for me. And even like, if you feel it, like, shed some tears, like, show them how much this means to you. This is the biggest stuff in life. Trying to feel well, trying to feel healthy if it's been a long struggle, and to not have the full support of your family is really hard. And just, try to get to the place where you can be so honest with them that you can tell them, I'm not going to collude with you anymore. I'm not going to sit there and be teased. I'm either going to leave, or I'm going to tell you in that moment, wow, that felt really terrible. I'm really trying to heal my body right now and I don't feel supported. So you got to go there sometimes. And that can be hard when you have a family history of teasing or not being honest with each other. So it takes some time. It does take some time.
Absolutely. And I always say what you tolerate becomes your new standard. So you continue to tolerate that sort of behavior or attitudes, it will become the standard. And although it is uncomfortable to break free of that initially, it's such a necessity if you want to sustain that lifestyle long term. So
yeah,
great advice. Thank you.
And another example that has come up a lot is especially between husbands and wives or boyfriend, girlfriends. And it's usually the guy saying it to the woman. I'm sure that's not always the case, but these are the examples I have. She will start to lose weight. She will start to feel good. She will start to glow. And he will say something like, oh, are you going to leave me now?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to start flirting? Are you going to cheat on me now? And it might be said in jest, but that one comment is enough. I've seen it happen so many times. That one comment is enough to make a woman feel like she's going to lose her man, or that he's feeling like I'm threatening our stability, and she will start to put the weight back on. She will start. Comments can make a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so I think that, you know, for everyone listening out there, I think just knowing that you're not alone is a huge motivator. I mean, it happens here, it happens in the States, it happens everywhere, and you have to really be strong in that moment to again evolve and I guess condition that mental and emotional toughness to better yourself continuously. Yeah, really powerful. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
Yeah. And, you know, try to have compassion.
So I want to talk about the cooking side of things, because I think when people are starting a journey, initially people are overwhelmed by the thought of having to cook. I mean, we eat out, we eat this rubbish all the time because it's convenient, it's easy, we can just fit it into our lives. But of course, it's so important to, I guess, find a bit of a passion for cooking and have fun with it. Do you have some really awesome tips that can shift our mindset or our thinking around food so we can start to enjoy the process a bit more?
Sure. Well, the first thing is to not don't try to be perfect. Really start small. And there are a lot of great pre-made things that you can rely on that are really good and really healthy. Like here in the States, we have a brand called Amy's Soups, and it's canned soup. They're all organic ingredients. They're low sodium, and they're in BPA-free cans, so it's non-toxic cans. I've got at least 24 cans of soup in my house. And what I'll do is I'll take, lentil soup, great, and 2 huge handfuls of spinach, fresh spinach. Just mix it in, let it cook down, let it wilt. And that's like a 5-minute meal that my child and I can eat that costs $3 to make, super healthy. So having some of those, really, pick 2 or 3 pre-made things that you can have to save you. And then get a little creative with leftovers. So one of my favorite things to do is have either cook a big pot of beans on the weekend, or again, have some good, healthy pre-cooked beans, either frozen or canned, that you can heat up. And then once a week, make a big pot of brown rice or quinoa that you can reuse a dozen different ways. And I say anything that you can do to pasta or salad, you can do to leftover grains. Yeah. You can steam it in a pot with just a little bit of water and close it, let it steam. 5 minutes later, it's ready to go. It's rehydrated, it's hot. You can put on your favorite spaghetti sauce and some veggies and, some organic meat. You can toss it with your favorite salad dressing. What's the other thing that I like to do with it? You can add it to a can of soup and make a stew and add some more veggies to that. There's just really, really simple stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I like to encourage people to try one new recipe a month. Really, 1 recipe a month. Start with that.
So doable.
So doable. Just 1 recipe. And if you have kids, really encourage you to have them pick out a recipe. Go through some cookbooks with them. Have them choose a recipe with veggies that they're going to eat, that they can begin to help prep. They can, you can write out a list together. It depends on how old the kid is. They can start taking more responsibility as they grow up. They can help write out a list, see what you need to buy this week for that recipe, go to the store with you or the farmer's market. And, my kid will be 10 in a month, and he can chop veggies. He can add stuff to hot water. There's a lot of things that he can do. And my intention is that by the time he's ready to leave the house, he can cook at least 3 meals, start to finish, all by himself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully he's cooking you the meals shortly so you can kick back and, I know that's the underlying message there for everyone.
That's the plan.
Put the kids to work. I love it. So do you have some great tips for overcoming sugar cravings? Because again, I know this can be a tricky situation for people in the beginning. I mean, heck, even throughout our whole health careers or lives, we're always going to run into these sugar cravings at times. So when you're transitioning from a poor diet to a great diet, and you're really trying to get off sugars and starchy carbs and things of that nature, what are some of your best tricks to overcome those?
Well, I don't know if we have the same vegetables here that you have. Sweet potatoes. Do you have sweet potatoes? Oh my gosh. Sweet vegetables are your new best friends. They are. I like now that it's getting cold here finally, we're finally in autumn here in New York City. So I will start baking like 5 or 6 of those at a time, and we'll have a few for dinner, and then I'll save the rest in the fridge. And you can go and just like cut off a hunk of cooked sweet. It's like, it's all cakey and sweet. That is a great afternoon sugar craving filler. But there's really 4 root causes to cravings that I would love to talk about. And I talk about this in my latest book, Women, Food, and Desire. But it's really important to know where they're coming from so that A, you can take it easy on yourself because everybody has them. And when you know when you discover what the real root cause is, then you can answer it without having to like kill yourself using up all your willpower. So the first one is bacterial cravings. So, the gut microbiome and alternative health, we've been talking about this for years. It's finally caught up with Western medicine and it's in the media, which is great. But if your bacteria is imbalanced, and you might notice that you have bloating, skin issues, mind fog, headaches, those are some other symptoms of overgrowth or gut dysbiosis, you will have more sugar cravings because the bad bacteria and yeast in your body live on the sugar that you eat. So I call them the puppet master because they are craving sugar even when you're trying to stay away from it. If you've ever tried to go off sugar and like day, hour like 30 or 48, somewhere into a day and a half, you start to feel like you're dying and you just like need sugar. It's because part of you is actually dying. Those bacteria are dying off because you're not feeding them with the sugar. So if you have any of those symptoms, it might be a bacterial craving, and you need to cut out all sugar. And that means alcohol, that means artificial sweeteners as well. And start loading up on things like probiotics and raw sauerkraut, those probiotic rich foods to help balance the bacteria in your body. And that can take a week or so to start feeling better, sometimes longer. But then there's nutritional cravings too. So sometimes, like my personal favorite sugar delivery system is chocolate. And chocolate is also a great source of magnesium. And a lot of us are walking around magnesium deficient. So if I actually have a whole 4-page thing of craving swaps to help you see, I'm craving chocolate. Maybe I'm magnesium deficient, so you can eat more magnesium rich foods if that's your one thing. Hemp seeds, chia seeds, some of the leafy green veggies. So eating more of the foods that give you what your body might be lacking. And I do recommend go get a blood test, find out what you're lacking in. Maybe it's iron, maybe there's a vitamin or a mineral you're deficient in. And then there's the emotional and physical cravings. And these are things that not a lot of diet books talk about. They either talk about nutrition or they talk about emotional eating. But you're a whole being. And we have all of these. Even the big dudes at the gym who are lifting weights and drinking high protein shakes afterward, they're making an emotional decision about their food in that moment. So we're all emotional eaters.
Absolutely.
And a lot of us, sorry, my cat. You just see the snaky tail.
Attacked by some sort of monster there. No, it's all good.
She is a monster. So we are all emotional eaters. And a lot of us eat for stress, anxiety, loneliness, anger, hopelessness. A lot of emotion gets soothed with food. So if that is part of your deal, it's really, really important to get some help, to start talking with somebody who can help you start to unwire those connections. And, I often joke, but it was so true, when I was going through an early breakup, like I would have a threesome every night on the couch with Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's is like the most popular, ice cream here in the States. They were my boyfriends.
Yeah.
They were helping me get through the night. So you're not alone if you have emotional food cravings. And actually anger, I call it anger snacking. That's a big one. That is a big one, especially something that's really crunchy, like, chocolate covered almonds. Yeah. If you're destroying something with your teeth that's really satisfying, who are you not expressing your anger to? What situation in your life is really frustrating for you? Got to handle that. And then last are the physical cravings. And we are all physical beings. We need to move. We need to rest. We need to have fun. We need pleasure. So I really encourage people to how much are you playing in your life? Do you get out and have a good time in your body? And I'm not talking about just going to yoga or going to the gym. Go play Frisbee with your friends, or run around with your dog, or have sex, masturbate. These are great things. Your body needs pleasure. And you can't just take out all the dopamine producing foods like sugar and not replace it with other stuff that's going to give you those happy hormones. So we got to have a full life.
Absolutely. I love that. Great points. How does food, food and emotion, it's a huge player. And I mean, if we can start to master that aspect, our world will change. But what are some of the changes you see in people once they improve their diet? How do their emotions then start to shift around that?
Oh my gosh. So I teach something called the Cravings Cleanse. And the women in the group that I'm just finishing up with right now, they're having such incredible discoveries. They're like, wow, I have all these feelings that are coming up because I'm not eating gluten and dairy and soy and sugar and all these things right now. And in the past, it felt so overwhelming. I felt like I couldn't deal with those emotions. But now that I actually feel good because my pain is gone, my digestion is good, the headaches are gone, all these physical issues are relieved because I'm eating better, I actually feel like I can handle it now. Yeah. And that's pretty remarkable. So we're talking about relationships changing, evolving in whatever way, because people become more clear about what they want. They also become more clear about how they want to be treated, and boundaries become really important. How do you expect other people to respect you? That's really big. Yes. What do you do for work? Is this job killing you? Are you pursuing something, doing work that you feel really passionate? It doesn't even have to be super passionate about, but do you feel like you're making a difference? Do you feel like you're helping people? Is this fun for you? Or is it total drudgery? Is it totally awful? Are the people terrible? So a lot of stuff can come up, which is why making these changes, it's like a spider web. And when you start to make a move over here, everything else moves. So I think that's why a lot of diet programs aren't successful. And I really never believe that. I have so many people that come to me and say, oh, I failed at this diet and I failed at that diet. I'm like, those diets failed you because they didn't support you with all the emotional stuff that happens when you start to move your body.
Absolutely. I agree. It's so important that we start to learn about that. I think that the three aspects, mindset, nutrition, and training and movement, if we don't have those three elements, we can't sustain it. We can't evolve. And that's why, unfortunately, so many people are up and down their whole lives and then give up eventually. I mean, it's sad but true.
Yeah. And when you talk about mindset, I think something that I would love if every trainer and health expert in the world would start building this into their programs. And that is just teaching your clients that your ability to be strong and resilient is really based on your ability to notice when you're stressed and to physically calm yourself down. That is the root of resilience right there. So breathing techniques and just feeling your body. Do you know how to like close your eyes and notice that you're feeling stressed or feeling anxious or feeling angry? Like, can you take that step back, notice where you're feeling it, and intentionally bring yourself back into a calm state? If you can do that, you can bounce higher from anything.
Absolutely. Great advice. And so true. So Alex, I love asking this question, and I'm curious about your answer. You know, if I could give you a time machine and send you back to your younger days, oh, there's that monster again. Send you back to your younger days. What advice would you give your younger self to help you now in order to be the best version of you?
Oh my gosh. Take more risks.
Nice.
Yeah. I think if I had just been a little bit bolder, I mean, I'm super happy with what I've done, but I'm a driven girl and I have so much more that I want to accomplish and do in this lifetime. And I look back and sometimes I'm like, man, I could have been so much further ahead if I had just like gone after that thing harder or raised my hand or gone up to that person and asked for their help. So taking risks, you know, being willing to hear no. Learning earlier that no is actually okay. No is a starting point.
I love it. So be bold. Beautiful. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Where can our viewers find out more about you? Where can we read some of your books and learn from some more of your experiences?
So 2 places. You can go to alexandrajameson.com, and I've got a podcast that's been on for a couple of years called the Cravecast. You can go to cravecastpod.com and sign up. I do lots of great interviews, lots of cool stuff, more about cravings that I talked about here with you all. But come to alexandrajameson.com. That's where all the good stuff is.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for joining us at UI Radio. Had such a great time learning about your past and your current stuff. And again, you're super inspiring and keep up the great work. We're all loving what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Andy. Good to meet you.
See you next time.